Jeff Beck never sugarcoated a single word in his life. While other guitar legends smiled for the cameras and played nice for the press, Beck said exactly what he meant. And what he meant was often far from flattering. He wasn't cruel. He was honest. For over 60 years, Jeff Beck chased something no one else could define. That one perfect tone, that one perfect note that couldn't be faked or mass-produced. So when he heard musicians coasting on hype or cashing in on formula, it didn't just annoy him, it broke his heart. To him, music was sacred. And these 7 albums weren't just bad records. They were symbols of everything he thought had gone wrong with rock and roll. The greed, the laziness, the polish that replaced passion. Some of them were massive hits. Some were even called masterpieces, but Beck, he could hear through the noise to what was missing. Let's dive into the 7 albums Jeff Beck just couldn't stand. 7. Slippery When Wet, Bon Jovi, 1986. It sold 28 million copies and turned Bon Jovi into the kings of arena rock. But to Beck, every single copy might as well have gone straight into the trash. While the world sang along to Living on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name, Beck heard something else, a sound stripped of danger, formula dressed up as rebellion. Every chorus felt calculated, every solo too clean. He once said the record sounded like it was built by committee, and that summed it up. To Beck, Slippery. When Wet marked the moment when rock stopped being art and became a product. Where he searched for emotion in the chaos between wrong and right notes, Bon Jovi served perfection on a platter. Shiny, safe, and soulless. The guitars were props, the attitude rehearsed. Jeff Beck wanted truth. Bon Jovi wanted radio play. 2 entirely different worlds, and he had no interest in theirs. 6. 1984. Van Halen, 1984. Jeff Beck respected Eddie Van Halen's genius, but that didn't mean he liked what Eddie did with it. When 1984 hit, the whole world jumped to jump, but Beck only heard a guitarist surrendering to keyboards. The biggest hit on a Van Halen album barely featured a guitar. To Beck, that was unforgivable. He didn't hate synths. He used them himself. What angered him was watching a revolutionary like Eddie use them as a shortcut instead of a tool. Beck saw 1984 as the moment when pure musicianship gave way to flashy tricks and overproduction, when guitar playing became a sport instead of an art. It was talent without danger, skill without soul, the very thing Beck had spent his entire career fighting against. 5. The Wall, Pink Floyd, 1979. Critics called it visionary. Jeff Beck called it exhausting. The Wall was hailed as a psychological odyssey. 26 tracks of metaphor, fascism, and madness. But Beck didn't buy into it. He thought it was rock opera trying too hard to be literature. He'd say, music shouldn't require a manual to understand. To him, The Wall was homework, dense, overproduced, and self-important. He didn't blame David Gilmour. He admired the man. But even Gilmour's guitar seemed buried beneath the weight of Roger Waters' grand ideas. Beck felt it was art that forgot how to feel. Where Beck's music thrived on instinct, The Wall demanded analysis. To him, that wasn't passion, that was ego. 4. Journeyman, Eric Clapton, 1989. This one hurt the most. Jeff and Eric Clapton had come up together, side by side, shaping the very sound of British blues. They were friends, rivals, equals, so when Journeyman arrived, Beck expected fire. Instead, he heard sleepwalking. It wasn't a disaster, it was worse. It was safe. Bad Love was polished, Before You Accuse Me was tidy, and none of it meant anything. The tone was perfect, the production flawless, but the soul, gone. To Beck, comfort was the death of art. He believed Clapton had traded danger for professionalism, the raw emotion of the blues for adult contemporary background music. Beck's reaction wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. He knew what Clapton was capable of, and hearing him play beneath that potential was like watching a great painter color inside the lines. 3. Never Mind the Bollocks, Sex Pistols, 1977. Punk came crashing through the door in the late 70s, spitting in the face of virtuosity. For the kids, it was freedom. For Jeff Beck, it was blasphemy. The Sex Pistols bragged about not knowing how to play. They wore their incompetence like a badge. Beck saw it as the death of craft. Anarchy in the UK and God Save the Queen had all the fury in the world, but none of the depth. To him, real rebellion required mastery first. You couldn't truly break the rules if you never learned them. He wasn't a snob. He loved untrained bluesmen who played from the gut. But the Pistols, he felt they had nothing to say. Just noise for attention. Beck feared what would come next, a generation of players who thought effort didn't matter. And sadly, he wasn't wrong. 2. Foolish behavior. Rod Stewart, 1980. Rod Stewart wasn't just another singer to Jeff Beck. He was the singer. Together in the late 60s, they'd created raw electric magic that still stands tall today. But when Beck heard Foolish Behavior, he barely recognized the man. The grit, the soul, the danger, gone. The songs were built for radio, soaked in glossy production and disco trends. Rod sounded like he was reading the lyrics instead of feeling them. To Beck it was betrayal, not of him, but of music itself. He'd once called Stewart a lion. Now he sounded like he'd been tamed by the industry. When reunion offers came later, Beck always refused. This record reminded him exactly why. One There and Back, Jeff Beck, 1980, and here's the twist, the album he hated most. Was his own. After Blow by Blow and Wired, expectations were sky high. The label wanted hits, not experiments. And for once Beck compromised. He trimmed the edges, cleaned the sound, made something safe. And he regretted it for the rest of his life. Fans loved There and Back. Critics praised it. But Beck could only hear the corners he'd sanded off. The instincts he'd ignored, he later said, you can please everyone and still fail yourself. That lesson stayed with him forever. From then on, every note he played came from the gut. No compromises, no lies, no pretending.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.